Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This should be posted on New Year's Eve, so I hope you all have a fantastic night, a fantastic year, and all your wishes come true. Anyways, on to the story. The Humans Survived What? Written by FarmWitch4275. It started as a random burst of energy readings and strange garbled radio transmissions while refueling our ship. We weren't even supposed to be in the sector when our communicators chimed with strange language and static. At first, we just assumed that it was just random static caused by the gas giant that we were harvesting fuel from. Not uncommon for any species with pattern recognition abilities to confuse random static with radio chatter. But this wasn't like that. While recording and filtering it, we intercepted a transmission directly. It was too organized, too direct to be random static. Someone was clearly speaking, but in a language that nobody understood. It spoke with a concerned militaristic tone. This took us by surprise. We focused the signal in an attempt to filter it out or determine what it was or where it was coming from. It wasn't a radio static from a gas giant. It was radio transmissions coming from one of the inner planets. We stopped all operations, finished refueling, and started to explore the solar system. It didn't take us long to find the offending world. And by all gods, was it confusing. The planet's upper atmosphere was saturated in space junk of all kinds, and satellites of all kinds, both derelict and functioning. We quickly found one that tapped into it. No real challenge, as most of its systems were either dormant or easily bypassed. It was in short order before we managed to find other satellites and tapped into them too. And within a few local days, we had every satellite still operational under our control. It was strange. They didn't fight back. It was like they didn't even know we were trying. That by itself made us think something odd was going on. Even several machines designated as military networks didn't even activate firewall protocols. A few of them even had some specialized data stored in them erased and the hardware scorched. Most unusual. Their operations knew something we couldn't know, apparently. We started performing scans and downloading all data from the satellites. Turns out the radio transmissions weren't flukes or ghost signals. They were still active. It took us time, more time than it usually would, to get the translation matrix to understand the languages, and there were many. One broadcast was something called a firewatch station reporting on local forestry. Amongst these notes were movements in the tree line. Strange. One broadcast was a radio station that played some apparently very old classical music, along with news broadcasts. Unfortunately, even with the translation matrices, we couldn't understand half of it. The operator of this radio broadcast was almost constantly intoxicated, babbling about them. We started to run stronger, more insecure scans on the planet. We were actually quite happy about the local populace. Even basic scans were telling us that the species, wherever it was ingenious. It was a species that understood the concept of logistics to such a degree that the planning for it put most of the galaxy to shame. We could easily tell that the massive road networks were well planned, and underneath all the rubble and debris, we noted a clear motive and intelligent plan behind the logistics network. Scans of the derelict or abandoned equipment showed a relatively primitive technology level, maybe a few generations away from proper space travel. But the way it was deployed was beyond ingenious. The combustion engines they used for fossil fuels were pollutive, but for what they were, extremely efficient for the task. The logistics systems of their electricity network was also quite impressive. Even tech we didn't think would work, worked. Hydroelectrics, using moving water to generate power? Pure genius. Distracted from the technological achievements, we failed to notice the very dark shadow that seemed to roam across this planet's surface. There was damage, dereliction, and destruction everywhere. Though the tech and deployment of this tech was truly impressive, revolutionary even, the planet was in a strangely recent state of devastation. Around 100 local days or so ago, by what our scans could tell, most major metropolitan or city-based population centers were in a major state of decay, still populated and very active, but it was like nobody was repairing anything or maintaining structure. The damage patterns made no sense, though. If it was a major military conflict, which is what usually destroyed fledgling empires, the damage patterns made no sense. Mostly fires, damages from burning, signs of combat certainly, even a few high-grade military vehicles around, but nothing to suggest a major conflict. Military bases and other facilities were all but abandoned. We tried to find out what was going on, but scans weren't accomplishing anything. Places outside of various zones had no power, so electronic entry was not an option. Places that did have power, due to proximity of natural electricity generation, such as hydro dams and other sources, had no real information to give us on what was going on. We deeply wanted to uplift the species for the galaxy as a whole. The more we looked at what they were accomplishing with the stupid stuff they had, the more we salivated at the thought of what they would do with more advanced tech. We decided to break protocol and take a more proactive approach. We weren't supposed to do this, but the possibilities offered by this planet were too great to ignore or wait for. We sent down a few probes, direct contact with the locals, a serious violation of protocols. 5 drones to start, 3 sent to major areas of high activity. The first drone approached the city, or what was left of one, and watched from above, trying to remain quiet. Sporadic sounds of what we surmised were gunfire, burning structures, and members of the local species wandering around, seemingly aimlessly for some reason. The local species looked strange. Grey-pale skin, milky eyes, and they made no real coherent sounds beyond grunts and growls. Most wandered about in packs and herds. We made that drone take a few surveillance pictures and set up patrol around the area to see if anything changed. The second drone entered a massive city built on an isolated island that we later found out was a place called Manhattan. The island was connected to the mainland by a series of 21 bridges, all of which were elaborately and beautifully designed, half of which had been completely or partially destroyed. The other half were either rigged with explosives or too heavily clogged with piled-up debris and traffic to be of use. We took detailed scans of the construction of the intact bridges and spent hours just marveling at the beautiful, sturdy construction and building techniques used. Some of the material wasn't supposed to even be used on bridges like this, but the locals managed to find a way to get it to work. Pure genius. So engrossed in the designs were we failed to take real note of the devastation. Hordes of the locals wandering about in disheveled manners, chasing down other locals who were able to quickly retreat from them. The drone was made to stay behind and perform detailed scans in the local area, and bridges specifically, ultimately ignoring the damage in the local area. A mistake on our part, to be certain. The third probe managed to get close and personal to a local at a place called a diner. It was found wandering about outside, making grunting noises, standing still for hours and aimlessly wandering about outside some kind of food establishment. It offered no reaction to the drone's presence, growled at any attempt at communication, and simply wandered away from the location. The locals looked very strange, though. There must have been some genetic variants of a very wild nature for the species, as we found some odd things about them. The common thread was 1 head, 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, with 10 digits in each hand. This one had only part of 1 arm, no left foot, and a part of its eye was no longer in its socket. We had noticed other locals with similar peculiarities amongst the species, such as eyes entirely missing, but still able to move towards the direction of whatever it was they wanted. Other members of the species had what appeared to be external mutations of organs, such as the intestines on the outside, or 1 lung inside while the other was outside. Strange. The locals dismissed our attempt at communications, and the probe was returned back to the base for recall, as there was some kind of mechanical failure with it. Probe 4 found 1 local alone in a forest somewhere, and we decided to just beam it up to the ship for close observation. The probe sedated it successfully, and we had it under observation. Further details of records were becoming clearer now, as this thing was called a human. We figured that we would borrow one for a few days to see what it was, then gently put it back where it came from. The ship's biohazard sensors immediately went berserk, with warnings as soon as it was on board. Those were dismissed, of course, and a basic sterilization procedure cleared any potential hazards almost instantly. The human was restrained and put on an observation table. Despite the heavy sedation we used, it was still active. It was twitching, moving, and growling. We offered it food of ours, but it seemed to be uninterested. It clearly displayed the behavior of a creature who was hungry but didn't want to eat any food that we gave it. One of our researchers accidentally got too close to its mouth and got bit, but the creature spat out what was there and began wailing in pain, or something. Strange. It allowed us to take some very detailed medical scans, and we started to better understand their biology. We did, however, discover that it had some kind of infection in its system, and we very quickly developed a sterilization agent for this odd affliction. But as soon as we administered the agent, the creature just up and died. All life signs failed, all movement stopped. The little spray of the agent we had developed, and poof, it was gone. We had no choice but to incinerate the body and place it under further investigation to try to figure out what happened. We tried to forget this happened. The fifth drone we deployed was sent to one of the new settlements in the Alaska region, discovering a more coherent form of human. Strange. The probe at first moved in the tree lines and tried to stay hidden for the most part. The settlement was made of destroyed vehicles with their tires removed and built as a makeshift barricades. Others' tires piled up on top of each other to form a wall of some kind. Trees had been cut down for a full half-mile to make log walls. Other trees sharpened and used as a spike perimeter. Makeshift barricades. Broken cars used for doors. Construction crane was used as a gate mechanism as well, using a bus as a gate that lifted up. Ingenious. But why was it even necessary? We decided to take some closer scans and find out what was happening. The drone hid high up in the tree, covered by a few branches, and took some aerial footage. A small community of maybe 1,000 humans had effectively cordoned off an entire town with a makeshift wall and were living in it together. Marketplaces, bars, restaurants, even a movie theater was still active. We couldn't help ourselves and got far too close for protocol's sake and took closer scans of everything we could find. The cars, the theater, the pumping system on the water supply, anything and everything we could find. We scanned it and tried to make sense of its construction. We got so excited at all the ingenious and very unorthodox construction and manufacturing techniques. It was amazing. So much development, so much equipment, and a lot of it was incredibly specialized, which explained why there was so much of it. The drone was so busy actually taking scans that we failed to notice its presence had been acknowledged by the populace. In the background, curious eyes looked up at it as it scanned and meticulously photographed various vehicles and pieces of equipment. By the time it was done, the majority of the town had noticed and were actively watching the drone work. It came to a conclusion when it approached a specific, very fancy-looking car and swept its scan beam over the vehicle. The drone registered damage, and one of the researchers decided to take direct control of it. A rock. One human had thrown a rock at it. The drone looked at the offender, and a dozen or more humans were gathered around him. This was the first time we paid any serious attention to the local populace. There was uniformity in genetics here. No external intestines, no external eyes, no missing arms or legs. What? This confused us. We stared at them, they stared at the drone for a long time. The drone took advantage of the awkward silence and scanned the crowd with detail, then hastily exited the planet to return to the ship. The encounter scared us and snapped us back into reality. We'd been so busy brooding over the species' achievements and technology that we had completely forgotten this was actually an inhabited planet. We recollected ourselves and got back to trying to understand this planet, and we had no clue. Several local days of attempting to collate the data we found, and we had little to no idea what happened. It also didn't help that we spent most of our time collecting engineering data either. Our entire operation was a breach of protocol in every action we took thus far. So we decided to break protocol even more. We decided after days of remaining in the dark about this planet despite our best efforts, we would just ask. Unorthodox. Normally we could figure it out on our own, but due to the odd circumstances and our own incompetence, we had no real data to work with. So we simply decided to find a human, bring it on board the ship and politely ask. Unorthodox mythology, if any. Never been done before either. So we went with it. We sent a team to a remote location, in this case what is known as the Firewatch Tower, a sort of outpost in forest to check for wildfires, and found the local human high on his tower. The team went down in a shuttle, one of our researchers and 5 security officers, along with a drone they could use to pacify in case of any issue. The drone made first contact with the human in the tower. The speaker on the drone allowed direct contact with the human. "Human, we know that you are in there. Exit your domicile immediately." "I ain't doing shit. I can hear those things under me," he replied, clearly agitated. "We mean you no harm, but you must come with us. We have questions we want to ask." The drone speaker carried the voice of the head research. "You can't get me to leave until they do. I ain't doing shit, Fed," he yelled. The humans under the tower growled angrily at the sound of the other human's voice and tried to chew on the steel tower's supports. "We will move our transport close to you. We can promise you won't ever touch the ground. Come now, quickly please. We do not wish to engage in violence, but we will if you leave us no choice." The drone yelled again. The shuttle pilot moved the ship close to the railing on the tower, and 2 of the security team members jumped out to secure the area. The human, with apparent reluctance, got up out of his hiding place under a desk and exited with his hands raised. These humans were short, very short. The soldiers towered above him by 2 feet and had a crane then next to look at him. The human finally saw what was there and became just as confused as we were. Well, that's a thing, I guess. The hell is going on? Why are you so tall? He asked one of the guardsmen. I could ask you why you are so short, too, human. Get in. Your guests appear to be getting angry, the guard replied. Those aren't my guests. They want to eat me. Please keep them away, and I'll do whatever you ask, the human replied, and, still with his hands raised, entered the shuttle. They want to eat you? Do humans do that? One of the guards asked. No, but zombies do. Can we go now? He asked. We stood silent. Zombies. What was a zombie? We were soon to find out as the guards re-entered the shuttle and sealed it for the trip to orbit. The human glanced to everyone on board and tried to make sense of what was going on. So, you aren't from here, are you? He asked. That is an understatement, one of the guards replied. So, how long have you been here? He asked. About 12 of your local rotations. I think you call them days, the researcher replied. Does that mean you were responsible in any way for what happened in the last year, then? The human asked, clearly agitated. We didn't even know your planet existed until a month ago. Do not falsely accuse us of wrongdoing. We have the evidence to support our claim, one of the guards aggressively replied. The human held his hands in front of him in a defensive manner. Okay. Wasn't implying anything. I was just curious. Kind of in a bad spot here, so excuse my curiosity. We are here. Proceed to your holding cell, please, the scientist said and escorted the human here. Okay, he said. We spent some time getting everything ready for the interview process and let the human rest a while. Eventually, we actually came around to it. The human sat opposite Krakold, the head researcher, and the two spoke for a while. So, human, I assume that your species has naming conventions. Do you have a name? Krakold asked. Reggie Dwight Jr. is my name. U.S. Army Rangers is the organization I used to work for before they got all eaten. Firewatch Post 86 Echo was where you found me. Your turn, the human said with a strange grin. Krakold Eld is my name. Iridani Imperium's Research Division is who I work for. Kasarai's Kiss is where we currently are. It is a starship, Krakold responded in kind. I gathered that. Used to send up a few rockets back in the day to space to see what was up there. Turns out, not much. At least not much that we could get. Reggie said, Indeed. We can tell that your space programs were excessive, judging by the debris that we had to sort through. So tell me, human, what happened to this planet? Krakold asked. Zombie apocalypse, pretty much it, really, Reggie replied, shrugging his shoulders. What is that? I know what an apocalypse is. It is a singular, all-encompassing event of catastrophic proportions that deals upon its victims unimaginable destruction, changing the face of the entire civilization forever. That much I know, but what in the world is a zombie? Krakold asked. You seriously have no concept of the undead? Reggie asked, confused and surprised. Undead. What is an undead? Is that the name of the town or something? No, an undead is a zombie, ghoul, demon or monster. Living dead. Paradox, one might say, but it is the truth. It's like a virus that kills the body, then resurrects the corpse to use as a means to spread. You're telling me that you have nothing like that in your culture? Reggie replied, half laughing. The research team shared concerned glances with each other, and suddenly parts of the story started making sense. So those people under the tower chewing at the steel, they weren't people? Krakold asked. Nope, zombies, infected. People that have horrible disease and haven't been given the fortune of an actual death. It started about a year ago. First reports of some kind of flu bug or something outside of Denver. Then it got worse after a week in Denver. The whole county was quarantined. Then we got reports from Alberta. More cases of the bug there. Then we lost contact with London. The flu started super bad down there too. It was a full pandemic at that point, called the worldwide quarantine. Then the people who died stopped being dead. Then the fan hit the shit for whatever sense that statement ever made, and zombies started popping up. Towns collapsed, cities burned, countries fell. Any town that didn't have a huge amount of guns and ammo didn't survive the first month. Screw cities, they were gone after a week too. Zombies ate corpses. Corpses that weren't completely eaten got up and started hunting other people to turn into more corpses. Whole families were wiped out. Whole countries got into chaos. Unless we got them in the head, they got up and kept coming. No pain, no fear, no rest, no peace. Get bitten or scratched and it's a death sentence. Most would rather shoot themselves before the virus gets them. No cure. Because the people who could figure that out got eaten, Reggie explained with more calmness than the situation called for. The entire crew watched went pale and started sweating uncomfortably.
And, how long is a year exactly?
How long has it been going on? Grickold asked. 7 days to a week, 52 weeks to 1 year. So 52 times 7. I figured it out. I've been a while, Reggie asked. All of us went into a state of shock at the revelation we just witnessed.
So that, the person we found on the ship was a zombie? An undead thing,
Grickold said, glancing at one of his cohorts. Wait, you had one on board? Reggie started panicking.
Stop. Calm down. Wait. We thought that it was a human that we could talk to because we had no idea what a zombie was. It didn't think that we were edible, though. It did bite at us, but nothing came of it. Even so, we scanned it and performed some tests and created a sterilizing agent. One spray of this agent, and the thing was down for good. It was incinerated, to be sure,
Grickold said. Wait, what? You did what now? Reggie asked, suddenly alert.
We scanned it and found a strange viral bacterium of some kind affecting the thing. We created a sterilization agent to get rid of this odd pathogen. We have very advanced tech for disease prevention. It was almost too easy, to be honest. We turned it into an aerosol for easy use and applied one dose. The zombie then just died completely. I think the agent we used killed all of the viral cells, keeping it functioning,
Grickold explained calmly. Well, shit. Got any more of that stuff, Andy? Reggie asked.
The formulation needs to be remade for the sake of safety. Now we have an idea of what exactly we are dealing with. We should be able to create a solution eventually, but I have to ask something. We have started combing through the data we found on the, how do you call it, outbreak? And we would like to know something. How did you survive this disaster?
Grickold asked. I don't know. Not much different than any other disaster we go through, really. Just stayed alive, I guess. Made tough decisions, left behind Redditors because they were infected. Basically the same way you would do, I guess. Plan, scheme, see what's out there. Learn to recognize threats, band together for numbers and ammunition. Send out teams of unlucky bastards to find supplies. Make concessions. It's all about survival at the end of the day when the pizza guy is trying to eat your face, Reggie said.
I am certain that this is a bit more complicated than that, but we will start working through that stage eventually,
Grickold said. Oh, hold on. I know the universe works okay, nothing for free. What do you want from us? From zombie apocalypse to slavery, I'm guessing. If that's the case, just shoot me now. I didn't survive Armageddon just to become an alien dude's rent boy.
Reggie replied, angered. Such a thing is highly illegal in the Federation space, so no, that's not going to happen. But we are going to see if a proper variant of the sterilization exists and dispense it accordingly. You are correct that nothing is for free, so in exchange we would like access to specific technologies. Technological schematics, blueprints, or even the thing itself is possible.
Grickold asked politely. You have spaceships and orbital shuttles, and you want tech from us. Are you desperate or something? What the hell could we possibly have that you would benefit from? Reggie scoffed at him.
Your construction and engineering techniques are unique and innovative, the likes of which we have never seen. We would like access to some of these technologies so that we can figure out how to do them too. We don't have the same kind of fuel engines that you do. Ours are very inefficient to the point that they have been abandoned. Our colonies are expensive to make because of the logistical factor. We would also like access to your thought processes in terms of logistics, as your road and rail systems are, frankly, ingenious. We would also like to know how your hydroelectric dam systems work, among other things. See, there is plenty that you have that we want, Grickold explained calmly, using photographs of the things he spoke of from our drones.
Okay.
But most importantly, we want to uplift your species more than anything. The thing that makes your technology so impressive is the thought process behind its construction. We would have never thought to use moving water to turn turbines for power. That's hydroelectricity, right? We want to know how that what-if process in your head works. If that same principle can be applied to a mass fabrication facility, how much more efficient could it get? Or a fusion reactor, perhaps. How much power would one make by your produce? Or hell, even starship engineering. How big could we get? That is what we are really after. Can we, come to some agreement?
Grickold asked Riley. Seriously? After all that shit you've seen here, you still want to work with us? Are you serious? Reginald confusedly asked.
Oh, come now. The situation is bad. We can at least take one aspect of it away. I can call the fleet for reinforcements and help you get back to something that resembles normal. For now, at least. We can help with one aspect. Infection. Recently bitten or scratched persons. We can make a one-time cure for that right now and get the distribution system started. At least we can start work on that. Once you are back up to a reasonable state in numbers and organization, we can see what happens from there. We've done it before. It worked out then, Grickold said.
You have a lot to learn about human nature, it seems. I know where to find archives for digital and paperback that will help you with this problem. Pop culture and science and stuff. I can point them to you, and you can help yourself. Make copies. But for now, a cure for the zombie virus would be the best thing that you can do right now. But fair warning, a lot of people have lost family members. We aren't exactly going to be friendly when you just randomly show up and start helping people. You have to be prepared for the fact that some of us don't take kindly to strangers in the best of times, let alone in the apocalypse. That's something that you need to plan for, Richie said.
Then we need to call the fleet before we can proceed with larger plans. In the meantime, Mr. Reginald, was it? Can you please proceed to the medical room? We need samples of blood and whatnot to see what we're working with. Maybe we can abduct a few more zombies and get a short-term cure for new infections going, Grickold said, gesturing to the door.
Okay, but after that, can I get something to eat? I haven't had more than a few cans of beans in like 2 weeks. Our repeated breach of protocol was not taken highly by the Grand Order, even less so by our own countrymen. The fact that we'd made so many unique discoveries only barely allowed us to avoid a court-martial for the sheer negligence. Before we could make any definitive moves, we decided to actually follow protocol for once and quarantine Reginald, the forest ranger, in the isolated booth. Then started the process of sterilizing and cleaning the ship, just in case. Reginald himself produced some very good results to what exactly humans were. Bipedal mammals, a common archetype from the galaxy, with symmetrical features and 4 limbs with 1 head. Height that varies based on age, skin tones that vary due to certain skin pigments caused by ancestry and environmental factors, varying genetic lineage by an absurd degree, more so than any other race in the galaxy, and an immune system that seemed to at least robust enough to counter most common galactic diseases, save, apparently, the so-called zombie virus. We were quick to acquiesce to Reginald's request for a meal, and he consumed it with fervor. We continued actually following proper procedure, and in short order, a blood sample from Reginald was being analyzed, a truly unique blood type. Despite the wear and tear caused by the present circumstances, Reginald himself seemed unaffected by the so-called red flu. The immune system was one of the most complex bacterial ecosystems we had ever seen before or since. An ecosystem so complex, it was prone to failure or self-destruction, as we later learned. Our scanning and biology tech is a lot more advanced than human tech ever was, so a single blood sample taught us more than any human study would have ever done. Reginald himself, as it turned out, had a sort of congenital dysfunction in his vestigial organ, as he called it, the appendix. We quickly realized this appendix organ would be rupturing, causing a lot of harm if left untreated. This time, we were able to justify a breach protocol and performed a short but necessary surgery procedure on him. This procedure, though short, taught us a lot more about human biology. Once Reginald had been put in recovery, we quarantined him again. We would waste no time in deploying a small team of heavily armed warriors and technicians to the planet's surface to start working on a cure, or at least a better sterilization agent than we created earlier. As we were later admonished heavily for by our commanders, the agent we developed when we came here was not a cure for bacteria, rather is indeed a sterilization agent, one far more potent than we expected. The zombie creature had so many strains of bacterial infection, our scanners failed to actually distinguish a target, and created an agent that killed all of it. Cells, matter, flesh, bacterial colonies, all of it. This breach of protocol was more egregious than we thought it was, and it, as Reginald put it, bitch-slapped us back to reality. We began stringent reforms of the ship's operations and went back to doing things the way that we were supposed to. At least until we found an intact vehicle known as a Peterbilt. Heavy vehicles with massive force of engine power built for the sake of towing and hauling mercilessly heavy loads, far beyond the galactic norm by a huge margin. Modular designs and many different variations of engine and trailer meant this was a multi-utility vehicle. Truly incredible. This distraction was remedied with the rapid arrival of the Skandi response fleet. We were nowhere near ready to accomplish anything, as the planet was now under a state of biohazardous quarantine thanks to the recent revelations. Their arrival made us return to protocol and forget the truck for the moment. Mostly, I sat quietly in my chair on the bridge as the communications unit called us. The screen appeared, showing the oddly crowd-like form of the Skandi Hive officer. Honorable crew of the Secundus Arcana Exploratory Craft, this is Grand Master Tezenth Oliver of the Skandi Imperium, 7th Cohort. How copy? The radio chimed, interrupting our intruding over the large cargo vehicle.
Honorable Grand Master Tessence, we copy loud and clear. I am Captain Meridius, the fifth of our clan Serenai Confederacy. Please be aware that this planet is under quarantine and no action is to be taken on the planetary surface. We have seen some rather concerning anomalies, I replied.
Oh, don't worry. I've seen the reports. I've also seen how you narrowly avoided a full criminal trial, he replied with that all-too-telling tone.
You will have to forgive us for that, but you saw the reports. Can you really blame us? In any case, we are actively attempting to pursue a remedy to the biohazard at present. Serenai and Orokan's DNA appears to be resistant or entirely immune to it, though we are taking steps. Please send over some data for cross-reference and analysis. We need more data to work with, I asked, typing notes on my console.
I can do better than that. Once I heard the quarantine measures, I specifically went to one of your neighboring colonies and commandeered a medical frigate from your fleet. I've had them retrofitted with some extra gear from our old ships. Hopefully, this will bring it to a fast end. Now, with that out of the way, tell me, he said, a strange glint in his eyes.
Yes?
Is it true that you found trains and rail networks that work with steam engines? He asked. I could clearly see a viewing screen behind him. A few of his officers suddenly stopped their tasks and were now listening in.
Well, yes, actually. We scanned one that had derailed off its tracks before we started to go temporarily insane, I guess.
I'll send those scans over immediately, I replied calmly and pressed a few buttons in response. The commander released a strange, happy squeal of delight and coughed in a clearly fake manner to regain his composure. We will consider this data. I will send the medical frigate to do a proper decontamination procedure with more advanced equipment. Is there anything you need? I smirked at his response.
Besides some more food supply to accommodate our guests, not really. We'll do another biohazard sweep. One of our researchers got bitten by the zombie creatures and is in quarantine as well, voluntarily, I said, showing a picture of the Varisian scientist Kal-El in her chamber, calmly reading a book.
Observe any effects. I see from these reports that bites and scratches are a method of transmission. Should I be concerned? He asked.
Well, Reginald, that is the name of the human that we have on board, who told us that the infection kills within a few hours. It's been a full day, and Kal-El hasn't even shown any signs of abnormal symptoms. No signs of any immune response. It's as if the infection hasn't recognized her biology as something to target. Very damn strange, I replied with a soft note of concern. What does that mean, exactly? Any theories? He asked. Well, I don't have any right to speculate, especially after so much silliness since we had gotten here. But we've taken a basic look at the virus that causes this. It shows signs of manipulation, or at least signs of coaxing. We aren't really sure what to make of it, I said, furrowing my brow. But time for that later. We will see. We have a team down on the surface collecting samples and watching behavioral patterns. We'll have answers soon enough. Oh, good. I take it they actually followed protocol this time, he said with a chuckle and a smile. Let's get this over with. The Discovery team is on the planet's surface, setting up still. We made sure to include heavy defense considering the circumstances. They'll be getting samples to send under maximum biohazardous safety precautions, probably before the local day is concluded. We will send all of the relevant data to the medical frigate soon, I replied, and started setting up our ship for docking procedure. Transferring you to the Alari. Head Officer Calbrinth of the clan Illyria is on station, he said. But the Calbrinth? The Calbrinth that found the cure to the Red Death? I bellowed in shock. A second holoscreen appeared and showed the very recognizable face of the greatest scientist of the Serenai came into view. I instinctively puffed my chest with pride as a very studious-looking, very tired-looking individual glared back at me. Calbrinth, Master Medikai, your presence truly honors us, I said with a bow of my head. Come now, it wasn't that impressive. Any monkey with a basic knowledge of gene sequencing could have done it, he replied with a dismissive eye roll. Great humility as always, Master Medikai. What do you need from us? I asked. We will duck up and clean up first, then I will take a look at all of your data and visit the human you have, he said. The conversation was quickly interrupted by the officer in charge of the away team. My Lord Captain, the shuttle is returning for retrieval. 2 guardsmen and 1 passenger on board. The head security will debrief on arrival. We could hear another voice in the background. It was a sound of wailing, babbling, and crying. Understood. Hangar is open and ready to receive. Proceed to Bay 47, I commanded,
and set the ship to general quarters alert. The holoscreens went blank as the two officers cut communications. I shrugged and headed to the hangar myself to see what was going on. The ship landed in the hangar, the air seal engaged, and suddenly the whole room filled with a pained scream mixed with frantic, incoherent babbling. It was a child, human, female, screaming as the security team quickly handed her over to the medical unit on board our ship. She was in a horrible state. One of the zombie things managed to get a hold of her left arm. The limb hung at the elbow, covered in blood with the red goo leaking everywhere, as part of it was barely connected to the bone by a few strings of flesh and muscle. The security team made the correct choice in following the procedure and putting a tourniquet on the arm. The blood was pouring from the loose end of the arm. The sight made all but the medical crew retch in horror and disgust, barely able to keep together as they put the child in a gurney and hurried her to the med bay. The screams quickly faded away, and we started the arduous process of cleaning the trail of blood that now saturated the floor of the shuttle and hangar bay. That wouldn't have been more than a few minutes of flight time. On one hand, shocked that despite the damage, a child, was still conscious and screaming, let alone still alive with that level of damage. The medical team would probably figure out how to reattach the limb as we considered what we were going to do. I left the hangar and headed to Reginald's holding cell. He was lying on his bed, humming to himself.
"Reginald?"
I asked. "Oh, hi! Just counting ceiling tiles. There's 384, he had said with a bored sigh.
How long does it take for a zombie virus thing to take effect from a bite?"
I asked, a sense of urgency in my voice.
"Is there a difference between adults and children?"
"Yep, there's a difference. With adults like 20 or so, it takes maybe 6 to 8 hours at most. Once dead, you turn almost immediately after the heart stops. With kids like younger than 15 or so, it's almost instant. Maybe an hour at most. Then again, it all depends on whether or not you actually get bitten. Sometimes the Zeds will just tear you apart. They'll grab you and tear off an arm or something to stop you from running, then try to eat you. If it's just that, then, well, yeah. Generally, after a limb is lost, you're screwed one way or another, so generally it's just, end it there," he said with a shrug.
"Well, we have a team on the planet's surface. They've hastily returned with a child whose left arm has been torn off at the elbow."
"You fucking what?" Reginald yelled and got off of his seat. I couldn't say much more as he bolted with more speed and agility than any creature his size had the right to move at. And before anyone could question anything, he was already down the corridor, heading to the med bay. This whole situation brought the ship to a state of unease. A strange tension that we had never experienced permeated the air. The security officer came up to me with a strange salute.
"Report."
"We were in the process of setting up defenses. We heard some screaming coming from the woodlands. We approached to investigate and I don't want to talk about it. We used a plasma rifle to disintegrate the creature that was in pursuit and put a tourniquet on the wound to stop the bleeding. We didn't know what else to do, so the commander made a snap decision just to bring her on board for treatment," he said, his eyes hollow and empty.
"According to Reginald, the zombies will sometimes simply cause grievous injury to their targets instead of eating them. So the chances are that the child will not be infected. We will enforce quarantine anyway," I commanded. "Take some time off. I will send a few men to replace your presence."
"Yes, my lord," he stumped over, nervously shuffling as he made his way to his quarters. "A good decision," I heard a voice from behind me. It was Galbaneth, in the flesh, hunched over from his signature back injury from his days as a combat medic. I couldn't say anything as he raised a hand at me and gestured for me to walk with him. We both quickly made our way towards medbay. We could no longer hear the screaming. Reginald was sitting in a chair with his head in his hands as four medical techs worked on the now unconscious child. Reginald saw me walk in and handed me an empty syringe.
"What's this?"
"Morphine. It's a very potent tranquilizer we use back home for surgeries and whatnot. I gave it to your tech so that they can stop the screaming. I carried one on me just in case. Almost everybody does. A full dose will dull the pain after a bite or damage and calm us down. Push comes to shove, it slows the brain. So if we die in turn, it gives whoever we are with a chance to put us down or run. So gave it to your techs and they figured it out, I guess," he explained. I looked at the child and the medics were simply running scans on her arms and the damage. Deep scans, using the newest scanner that we had on board. "Report," I commanded. "We're scanning the muscle structure and trying to figure out how to reattach the limb. It's proving to be more complex than expected. We've stopped the hemorrhaging and the heartbeat is slowed. The human has informed us to be careful. If the heart slows too much, you'll die," the head doctor said. "Found it. Programming the mech. Please hold," the nurse said. "Muscle structure is protein-based with many connections and multiple nerve endings. She will never be able to use her arm properly again, but she'll not lose it entirely." "Permission to proceed?" the head doctor asked, gesturing to Reginald. "Get on with it!" Reginald bellowed with frustration. The team scrambled fast. Galvaneth hobbled over to the surgery table and put some gear on, as per protocol, as the two worked. He quietly pointed at specific things and did some on-the-fly programming as the surgical mech arm rapidly assembled the torn limb.
A truly fascinating species, Galvaneth said to himself. Any signs of infection? I asked.
Negative, sir. No signs of the actual viral infection. I think the limb was just torn off and, the nurse said, then causing all of us to collectively shiver in horror.
This is so much worse than we imagined. Why does this make me feel so angry? I said idly.
Makes you angry? The fuck do you think it makes us feel like? Been dealing with this for a year now. We've had to make worse choices. Ever seen a newborn and a mother get torn apart by a pack of 10 of them? I have. Ever seen an entire town get wiped out by a swarm of hundreds of them? I have. This is nothing, Reggie said, angrily smacking the door with his fist before leaving to return to his quarters. We all stood in silence and let the medics work. It didn't take them long as the protein sequencer device reassembled her arm. It wasn't perfect, but it was at least still there. She wouldn't have too fine a motor control, but the arm and hand was still usable. She probably would need to learn how to use it again. During this process, we got a scan from the ground team that allowed us to see what the zombie virus was. A mixture of bacterial infection caused by a rogue misfolded protein prion. Galvaneth looked at the data. Reginald was nearby at the time and watched closely with us as we pored over it.
Most unusual, such a strange pathogen, Galvaneth said as he looked at the data.
What? Reggie asked.
This pathogen is one of the oddest strains of infectious disease I have ever seen. I can clearly see the delineation in the evolutionary timeline. It evolved fast. Couldn't be more than, maybe 20 years old. It's definitely rooted in a bioweapon, though. You can tell that there is some actual engineering going on here. But then it just stops. Bioengineering is linear and controlled. It's like a straight line. Natural evolution is like a zigzag pattern or a circular motion, see? Starts with a straight line and ends with a squiggle, he replied. Well, that makes sense. Bioweapons were usually outlawed for obvious reasons back in the day, but we never actually used them as bioweapons, I hope, Reggie said. Pardon? How is that?
Well, we used to make vaccines and other stuff for viruses, figure out how they work and shit. We didn't have the fancy scanner tech that you guys have, so we had to do it the hard way. Make a virus, see how it works, then make the cure based on how it works. We used to make viruses of our own in order to figure out how they worked, so we could figure out how to cure other viruses with similar symptoms and methods of transmission. Virology and stuff. At least I think that's how we did it, Reggie said. Sometimes those viruses got out due to negligence or some other stupid mistake, or theft, or mismanagement or something. So, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, that explains how it started life as a straight line. But these patterns make no sense. It looks like it went through 12 variations of itself with a dozen different DNA mixes to get to where it is now, Galvaneth said, tracing its bony finger across the screen. The screen showed a line that basically spelled out its evolutionary roots, starting life as a straight line, then turning into a jagged squiggle, then a curvy wave, then a sharp angle, then a pattern changed again and again. As far as I can tell, this virus started its life as a bioweapon or some kind of viral test. But it was so mild that it did no damage and acquired a DNA evolution from another virus that infected the host. Then it jumped forward. Still mild enough that it only quantified as a mild infection. It carried on doing this for 20 more years until, Galvaneth said, tracing the line. Until it hit the trigger point that made it go berserk, I said, noting how the squiggly line suddenly went straight, then had a sharp turn to a jagged peak. It looks as though the virus at this point had been noticed and was undergoing experimentation for treatment. Then something happened that caused the sudden evolutionary outbreak. A chemical response to an antibiotic or medication, perhaps, that caused the prion-based code to suddenly go insane. This straight line here is simply an accelerant that made it go haywire. What were they doing here that made it do this, though? I've never seen an evolutionary path like this, he said, tracing the line and pointing at the specific points. Well, it does make sense. Viruses and plagues and stuff have been with us since the beginning. Syphilis, the Black Death, the common cold, H1N1, influenza, malaria. So many different things. We have to have a relatively strong immune system to deal with all of that nonsense. So, yeah, Reggie said. How do you know all of this? You are supposed to be a forest ranger, if I recall correctly. Your job isn't necessarily virology, I asked.
Well, I spent hours alone, bored, looking at trees. So when things were calm outside the fire station, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube and reading Wikipedia. 'Cause, boredom. So, yeah. Did you know that the Hoover Dam produces an average of 4 billion kilowatt hours of hydroelectric power with each year due to nothing but force of flowing water? Yeah. I had to do something to keep busy, so I browsed the internet, Reggie explained with a shrug.
We shared glances of concern and amazement. Well, what's an internet? I asked.
You guys don't have an internet.
What? Reggie exclaimed with a strange smirk. I shook my head and paid more attention. Explain, please.
The internet is a global network of billions of computers and other electronic devices. With the internet, it's possible to access almost any information, communicate with anyone else in the world, and do much more. In short, the internet is a network of computers connected together over long distances that share and store information. The internet is basically what defined the entire planet for the last while. It's 20 to 42 right now. Just about the last 50 years or so. Basically, it's one big, massive, complicated open-source communications network, Richard replied.
We just glared at him, bewildered.
The longer I stay here, the more I like this place, despite the trauma, Kalbanath remarked casually as he resumed his work. Well, the networks have been down since month 1, so in order to recover that data, you have to repower the network and get those computers back online. I've heard rumors of some new towns and settlements popping up. I've also heard of some weird activity being done on the hospital near my tower. That was weeks ago, though, so not sure how accurate that is. Might want to check that out, Richie explained calmly. We'll one day way or another have all the data I could ask for. Healthy human, injured human, and apparently the scan data from a captured infected undead human. I'll start work immediately and see what I can find. Once I have relevant samples and my lab set up, I can begin the real work. I would advise not engaging in any serious work planetside until I have some idea of what we can expect. I need to see if this virus evolves faster or slower. Maybe we are immune for now, but won't be in the future, Kalbanath said and started working. Reggie and I headed back to the medbay. The techs had finished their work, and the child's arm was back on. Wrapped in bandages and cleaned up, Reggie moved close to her and gently moved some hair out of her face. This was apparently enough to stir her from her sleep. Hey, sweetie. Hey, how do you feel? You okay? He said softly.
My arm hurts a bit when I move it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper.
Well, that's good, see, Reggie said as he gently showed her the bandages. Good as new, see? No nasty zombie bite or nasty hurts anymore. All fixed.
How's that? My arm was all like, it hurt a lot, and now it's not hurting, she said tearfully.
It's okay. Shh, calm down. You're safe here. No need to cry. Do you remember your name? What's your name? My name is Reggie, he said, gently wiping a tear off her cheek.
My name is Stacy. Where am I? She sniffled back.
Want to know something fun? You are in space, said Reggie.
She looked at him with a crooked brow. You're silly. We can't be in space. Our heads aren't exploding.
Well, yeah, we aren't in space, but we are in a spaceship in space, Reggie said with a smirk.
Okay, that makes sense. How are we in space, though? Daddy said that we don't have space stuff, so, yeah,
Stacy said. Well, want to see something super cool?
Yeah, she squealed happily.
Reggie signaled me to come closer and show myself. I stood there in view of the child and let her take a look at me. Space aliens in space. Is that super cool or what? Reggie asked.
For a while, it seemed like she went into some kind of shock as she just stared at me. He looks funny. Once with the long neck.
She squealed and pointed with a giggle. I felt self-conscious all of a sudden and tried to make myself look a bit shorter. That's because he's an alien. They have long necks. You didn't see them before. They brought you here after you got hurt, after all, Reggie asked.
Well, I didn't see anything. It hurt too much, and I was crying. I couldn't see it. It just saw big things and walls and ran towards it. I thought it was home.
Fair enough. I guess when I was panicking, I'd go towards the nearest big wall or something. What were you up to in the forest by yourself? He asked.
I was looking for firewood and got pounced on by a rotty thing. I didn't see it before I yanked my arm. I just ran as fast as I could. I think I got stuck under a tree or something, then started chasing me, she replied,
Reggie quickly calmed her down and wiped more tears from her face. Well, that's all over now. Your mom and dad still around? He asked.
Yep, at least I think so. We have a home in, what did you call it? Sancho Ari, or something. Daddy works as a vet and Mommy stays home with the baby brother.
She replied with a smile. Sanctuary City. I've traded with them a few times over the last year. Used to be a town outside of Burbank near the highway, blocked off with military hardware and scrap metal barricades. Turned into what is basically the only place I know of nearby that can get supplies from. Haven't been there in weeks, though, Reggie said, looking at me.
This is good to know. I'll send a platoon of drones down because the planet is still under quarantine. Now we know that what we're dealing with, we can calibrate the sensory network to respond to the infected accordingly. We can keep the place properly guarded, at least. Extra firepower never hurts, I claimed.
True that. I ran out of ammo before you guys showed up, Reggie replied.
Indeed, I'll get started with drone patrols and drone operations. The scientists will do their work, and we will see what happens after that. Now let's let her rest and see if we can get her home, I said, and left the room.
Carbonath burst into the room and grabbed me.
He stared at me. I fell on the trigger that caused the zombie mutation. You're not gonna fucking believe this, he yelled.
I glared at Carbonath confusedly.
Okay, so I guess you found the trigger mechanism.
The Red Death, he replied. Lockdown, quarantine level. I started to bellow. Shut up, he yelled back, interrupting my orders, and shook me vigorously. He then dragged me towards the nearby microscope array and shoved my face into it to look. He put a sample in and made me look. I looked at it, making it focus. There it was, tiny, small. The virus strain that looked like a cluster of worms entangled around a large short worm. We both looked at the results, looking closely at the sample in front of us.
No freaking way, I said.
Indeed. So now, Reginald, I must ask, do you have any viruses that compromise or violate the human immune system? Carbonath asked, looking at the human who was blankly staring at us. Yeah, a bunch of them, actually. HIV, AIDS, lupus, CIDS, a few more. Even a new strain of antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis appeared in the last few years ago. We aren't nearly as strong as you make us out to be. There's way too many viruses on this planet anyway. I think, I don't know, maybe the zombie plague killed them all off. No idea. I haven't exactly had a chance to check. What with the whole don't want to be eaten alive by my neighbour thing? Reggie replied.
This all stems from that last event for its evolution. Someone, somewhere, found it and tried to do something with it, and somehow created a strain of virus that reconstituted death flesh, Carbonath said.
Well, I have no idea what that is, but I can tell you where the outbreak started. Ground zero, as it were. You got a map of the planet. I can point to where it started, or at least where the news said it started, Reggie said. I read posts on the news outlets and figured out my way through the bullshit. If I remember right, it started in a virology lab in North Dakota, somewhere in the mountains, Reggie said. I immediately grabbed a holoscreen and showed him how to use it. Here's the map. Just drop your finger on the screen and move it. Pinch and zoom out. You can figure out the rest yourself. Oh, damn. It's just like my old car GPS, okay? Let's see. North America, Canadian border, Dakota, North, yeah. He drew a circle around a specific spot in the mountainous region. It was a big circle, hardly surprising. But it was better than scouting the entire planet.
Deploy scout drones to that region immediately, I bellowed,
causing the crew to immediately scramble into a work frenzy.
As soon as we have the location in hand, I want a full team deployed to search the area. Kill any infected you find, and set up a perimeter. That place looks reasonably defensible. We can use it as a stronghold for our future operations. Carbonath, I can't afford to have you on the ground team. Stay here and keep working. We don't have data for a cure, but I want to make sure that the non-humans can't be infected by this thing. I'm going to put a new protocol down.
Reggie's head spun with how fast everyone moved. He just shrugged and returned to Stacy's side to keep her calm. The ship became a bustling hub of excessive activity, and operations could finally start anew. Reggie, Stacy, and the medical data we had so far were all moved off-ship and onto the medical frigate for proper study and containment. With professional-grade equipment, it didn't take Carbonath long to create an emergency serum for use in case of infection, and within hours we located the facility. A team was already deployed, carrying blaster rifles instead of plasma weapons. I was watching through the camera feed of a drone that was following the commander around. The team landed in a parking lot of some kind. It took us a tremendous amount of self-control to not get distracted by the military machinery that was called a tank, but we made our way through the area. It didn't take long to find the first few zombies. The creatures completely ignored the team, as they always had. The team had orders, and our blasters made up fast work of the creatures. The team lead yelled, "Pick your targets. Infected only, and shoot at only what you're guaranteed to hit. No collateral." The blasters fired, and within seconds, 20 or so zombies were now inert biological matter. The bolts impacted one poor bastard's head, and it just evaporated into a cloud of mist. Then the creature just dropped to the ground, dead. The zombies were crowding around the entrance to the facility, and their corpses had to be dragged out of the doorways so the team could enter. "I'm starting to hate human architecture. I feel so cramped in these places," the team lead said.
"Unsurprising. The average height of a human is a meter shorter than us. I don't really think they've expected us to be around. Can you see anything?" I asked.
"Blood everywhere. Skeletons. Looks like some humans here were eaten completely. Damage patterns consistent with heavy combat. Ballistic munitions, probably. Power is completely gone, so I have to use the local light sources," the team leader replied.
"Sweep and clear. You are looking for laboratory equipment or a vault of some kind that keeps plagues on ice. Be careful. We don't know what they have stored in there. For all we know, it's how these humans work. We might find something worse than the Red Death," I commanded.
"Understood. Proceeding." The team moved forward. The zombies here were in a state of inertia owing to an advanced state of decay. They had been here idly shambling for months, most of them unable to move very far owing to the amount of damage they sustained. Dispatching them proved trivial at worst, and the team cleared the building room by room. The most notable aspects of this building were the boardroom of some kind filled with 12 skeletons surrounding a large table. The scanners and the troops were able to determine these people willingly consumed a beverage or poison before the zombies ate their remains. In one of the bathrooms, there were clear signs of heavy struggle. One human had been ganged up on by a few zombies. Judging from the struggle pattern and bloodstains, the poor person had been literally torn to pieces before being eaten. Some humans had managed to barricade themselves into the canteen, but ran out of food in short order. They retold of how they held out for a time before attempting to escape using a ventilation system. Considering the amount of dried blood that leaked out of the vent shaft, it would be safe to assume they never made it. Another room, this one slightly more interesting than simply telling a story. This one looked like a small sample laboratory. Blood samples judging by the red stains inside untouched test tubes. The team swept in, finishing off a zombie that was shambling around trying to eat the wall, and made scans of everything they could find. We were instantly flooded with truly astonishing amount of information, not only from the machinery in that room, but the quantity of documentation the humans kept around. The team rummaged in drawers and cabinets and scanned every document they could find. I messaged Nath and sent him these documents and scanned data. He got so excited, he let out the most unprofessional squeal of delight that nearly made my oral receptors melt. The unit continued operations and eventually found the thing that we were looking for, the main lab. "Found something. Solid steel door. Sign says main lab. Scans can't get through it."
"Wait, your scanning equipment can't penetrate the door?" I asked in shock.
"Negative. We ping and soft scan it. Nothing. We can't see beyond the door. We have to open it the hard way," they said. My engineer looked at me with a sign of both shock and awe.
"Proceed. Destroy it if needed."
"Understood. Heavy blaster forward. See if you can find a hinge point on this thing," he said. The team procured a heavy bolter blaster and fired 5 repeated shots at the door. The door itself shrugged off the first 3 blasts with not a scratch. The last 2 bolts found weak points in the seal, and they took advantage of that weakness, blasting the door out of its frame enough to be forced open manually. The team entered and found a human, uninfected female, wearing a disheveled lab coat and a determined expression. She looked unbathed, broken. The lab part of the facility was a lot larger than it looked from the outside, and we came to a conclusion that the outside area was administration of some kind.
"Don't come any closer. Stay away," she yelled at the team.
"Human female, uninfected, agitated, set for stun," the team lead said.
"I said stay away," she bellowed.
Before she could do anything else, she was hit by a stun bolt. She crumpled onto the floor and lay there. "Target disabled, alive, stable. Calling for retrieval team."
"This is Carl from the Sundown. We have our antibodies and base prep. We have a team available. Sending through. We'll transfer directly to the medical frigate."
A radiocom barked at us. The Skakandi were listening in on our comms already. I guess they tapped themselves in. Sneaky devils. "Copy that. Area is hot. Hostiles do not use words of communication. They simply grunt and growl. Zombies are the animals. The humans are not. Understood?" I replied. "Understood. We'll check targets. Shuttle on the way. Pool medical team on board. Sundown out." "Good. Did someone give permission to use our network without my knowing?" I asked. "Grand Admiral Dakotha did, my lord. The El Rey's Kiss arrived in system about an hour ago. I got my orders direct from him. He tried to make contact. You were too busy with the away mission, so he made the call himself, the comms officer said calmly. That nearly made me jump out of my seat. De Calta was here. The fleet's Grand Admiral was here. I couldn't think about that. This is the expedition team. She wasn't alone down here. We found 5 more humans. They all surrendered. 2 of them are in critical condition begging for food and water. Orders?
Evacuate them. Secure the perimeter. A heavy shuttle is on the way. Send them to the medical frigate. Clear out the rest of that place. I want proper scanners deployed as soon as possible, I commanded.
Affirmative. My body's on the way. 2 and 3 escorts to the landing zone. The rest with me. Proceed. Make sure that any Zed you find is guaranteed dead. Destroy the brain or the head, the team lead said.
This is Captain Meridius. We have a situation at potential data site location. We need reinforcements to secure the... Oh no. Oh shit. All ships, please advise. Ground team is occupied and human settlement is under attack by swarms of infected. Humans need emergency assistance. I barked into comms as I got the emergency ping from observation drone at the settlement known as Sanctuary. Bulwark reporting, drive charging. All personnel moving to stations. We are small enough to operate in atmosphere. Permission to proceed? I didn't have time to consider options. I was getting too many messages from many sources. Luckily, I had a command structure that took over. This is Grand Admiral Dethalka. I'm taking command of military and security operations. Science and medical teams will remain in operation and hand over scouting duties to other ships. Calder fleet will remain as escorts. All other ships will proceed to provide orbital support immediately. All ships capable of atmospheric travel proceed to supply close ground support. All ships to battle stations. All ground teams deploy, the radio chimed in. I breathed a sigh of relief, but still had a job to do. Science team at Point 1 outpost. Human settlement is under attack. Proceed to provide assistance immediately, I commanded. Understood. We are moving now. Sending data we have and proceeding to location. Time of arrival, 2 minutes. Bulwark reporting. Drive charge. Blinking in 2. 1. One of the Skakandi frigates, a relatively small assault craft with a reasonable armament, then vanished from the fleet and reappeared above the human settlement that Stacy came from. Within seconds, we were tapped into the security feed on their ship to see what was going on to study the Horde's movement. The zombies had gathered around the barricades by the thousands. The humans in their settlement desperately fighting back against the Horde. Some were firing rifles wildly into the mass, cutting Zeds down by the dozens, but the sheer numbers were just too much. The zombies were crowding around the gates and barricades, using sheer massive numbers to break through. The barricade starts to give way when the Bulwark uses its small but still formidable cannon array to cut the Horde's numbers in half, following several explosions. At this time, plasma fire starts coming from the surrounding woodland, and several groups of zombies in turn into piles of goop. One of our berserkers charges from the tree line in full sprint, uses a plasma sword to slice and dice through the whole horde of monsters. The humans are confused, scared, and agitated, so my men take a few bullets from their exchange. No damage, of course. Human weapons were decent, but wouldn't do much against our armor plating. The Bulwark deployed its combat teams to the ground, and within minutes the battle was over. It wasn't easy seeing this much damage. The humans were agitated. They saw our war mechs, our ships in the sky, and a full cadre of assault troopers, all of which were taller than they were and just came out of nowhere. The science team started wandering about between the army and finished off stragglers and wanderers, collecting samples and parts that had been blown off for study. The two forces simply stood there and stared at each other, unsure of how to really proceed with what was going on. The silence carried for several minutes. Nobody really sure what to do about the situation. Scans were done and counted 683 humans. I made a snap decision and called for the medical frigate. I needed to placate them as fast as possible. We could prove that we were not against them. I marked into my comms unit in Serenai to the medical frigate. Shortly thereafter, I got word my order was being carried out. Apparently, Calbernath got everything he needed. A shuttle was quickly dispatched to the ground and landed in the midst of the settlement. The boarding ramp lowered, and the humans in the crowd gasped in shock as Stacy and Reginald made their way down to the concrete. They both looked fed, healthy, and above all, clean. A contrast to the disheveled mess that was the rest of the town's populace. A woman in the crowd noticed the child and charged towards her. The woman moved with such ferocity she knocked over one of the Praetorians as she rushed over, embracing the child. Tiny little Stacy smiled and hugged back, "Hi, Mummy." Reginald took a moment to calm as he approached the survivor with a pool of blood from a scratch slowly forming next to him on the asphalt from a gash in his arm. The virus was already taking hold. The agitation, adrenaline, blood loss already made him start shaking violently from the infection. His teeth chattered, and he was barely able to stand as the other survivors pulled away from him.
Reggie presented a small bottle of blue liquid and poured it over the wound. The gash closed. The blood stopped. The man stopped shaking. The color returned to his face. He stood straight and looked at himself. He was fine. He'd gotten scratched. Minutes from now, he would have had a bullet in his head and a mourning family, but now he was okay. Reggie turned to face the crowd of onlookers and spoke in a strangely joyful tone. So, these guys are space aliens from, space. They like us and, are here to help, so, yeah. The human male Reggie just heel-turned to face the crowd, a tear rolling down his cheek. A moment of stunned silence followed before every human in the crowd began to yell and jump for joy. The old man, grizzled and gruff, stared at us as we stood in his office. Well, less than an office and more an armory inside of an office. The walls lined with dozens of firearms and boxes of ammunition heaped on shelves. I took a close look around the place from my own drone camera and noted how there were several boxes along the shelves full of canned food, wall-mounted boxes full of medical supplies. He was hastily attempting to organize some paperwork on his desk. It was me piloting a drone, two security praetorians, this human, Reginald, and Decathus, the chief science officer of this expedition team. So, you're aliens? He asked. Please be aware, for the sake of judicial record, this conversation is being recorded on this device here. My name is Thomas James Stafford. He patted a small box on his desk. Decathus replied. How long have you been here? He asked again, scribbling something on his paperwork. We've been in the star system for 2 months. We have been aware of your planet for 1 month and have been on the planet's surface for 10 days, I replied through the drone. We've been dealing with an apocalypse shit for a year now, so that means that you have nothing to do with the outbreak, he said, scribbling note. We have found the origin point of the virus outbreak, tracing it to a biolab in the Rockies, I think is how you say it, Decathus stated. Ah, so it's our fault after all, then, he asked, scribbling more. We have yet to determine the exact cause, but it's a bit more complex than that. We need to get more data from the lab and other outlets to fully piece the puzzle together. But for now, a full cure is now fully available. We are already starting to mass-produce it, I replied. Ah, you people work fast, he said, scribbling more. We have technology that is several thousand years ahead of yours, and we have been dealing with our own variations of a deadly space plague for those millennia. Because of our effort with that space plague, our medical technology is powerful enough that we can... How do I put this? Decathus said. They can scan things, then 3D print anything they need, like Star Trek, but with medicine, Reggie replied. The old man scribbled his notepad. That's useful. You got spaceships, fleets. You probably got a huge empire that spans the galaxy. Looks like more than one species, probably a lot more than that. Distinct cultures, judging by demeanor and stance. Very advanced tech, laser blasters and plasma cannon things. Likely you've abandoned ballistic munitions and have no need for them. You got that armor you wear, makes you resilient or immune to low-caliber weapons we use, judging by the fact that you aren't showing any symptoms of the outbreak. You aren't affected by the virus, or those suits are biohazard safe, likely both. We were somewhat taken aback by his summary of the situation. That is, very apt. How did you... I'd been a career politician for 3 decades before this shit started, buddy. Being in the chain of leadership for a nation like the U.S., especially after the Reformation War, you don't live long in my position without learning how to notice details. Pattern recognition is also a thing with our species. 2 + 2 = 4. About as simple as it gets. Now, your turn to ask questions. I got what I need for now, he said, putting his pencil down. No questions as to how long it'll take to find a cure or anything like that, I asked. You have a cure. It was right there. I saw you use it on Tommy. T-virus, as far as I know, is airborne. If you can find a way to provide something like an aerosol-based cure for air dispersal, we have an old crop duster that still works. Can use that to distribute the cure in short order, he said. What's a crop duster? Decathus asked. Crop duster is a small, highly maneuverable aircraft that carries fertilizer, water, or other agricultural components, such as pesticide, to spray them from the air, above crops. We can probably retrofit the plane to carry tanks full of any aerosol and use the planet's air current to spread the cure around a bit better, he said with a shrug. Or something, I don't know, just spitballing ideas. I'll leave it to you. You came up with that solution how? How long have you been thinking about it? Since you walked in that office, basically. That's how we humans work. We encounter a problem, we start thinking about ways we can solve it. Usually pulling answers directly out of our asses or out of thin air. Usually both. And usually our solutions for that problem are based on what we have available. Crop duster, aerosol-based chemical sprayer, aerosolized cure for plague. Aliens who can make it. Crop duster, there you go. He replied, again shrugging his shoulders like nothing. Everyone listening to this conversation blinked in surprise. Did they seriously work this fast and come up with answers that quickly? And the answer was esoteric, but that level of problem-solving in that capacity, truly incredible. The more we spoke to these humans, the more we wanted them.
I see that. That starts to make sense in how you managed to survive this long, especially against the odds we have seen so far,
I remarked. No, we survive by making hard choices, extreme sacrifices, and witnessing the kind of shit that would make even the devil himself weep. I'm going to make something clear before we start. The people here will be happy with your help. We've been through hell, but don't expect a warm welcome anywhere else. We are human, and we have turned killing each other into an art form. We are not a united front. Even at the best of times, our biggest pastime of the species is coming up with new and creative excuses to tear each other a new one. We don't trust anyone, especially not each other, long before any of this shit started. It's kind of why we have so much military hardware and nuclear weapons milling about. That wasn't a zombie plague thing. That was just the last 10,000 years of human history thing. Guns have been around for longer than zombies have ever existed as a concept. Now, consider current events. Societal collapse. No laws, no will, no government, no nothing. We went from being reasonably okay to being 7 different kinds of screwed. Now consider the heartbreak. At the best of times, we're emotionally unstable. Now add zombies. Someone you love not only passes, but comes back and tries to tear you apart. You watch as people you know and love get grabbed and ripped apart. The screams haunt you. You hear your child desperately screaming for help, and there's nothing you can do, because if you try something, you die too. You have to leave your family and your friends. You have to make choices that no living creature in the universe ever has to make ever. That kind of shit, it breaks you. Makes you a monster if you aren't one already. Being forced into those kinds of situations, it changes the soul as much as it does the mind. So I'll make my warning clear. We are not a united front. We've never been, never will be. We are slow to trust, easy to anger, paranoid, and will actively look for someone to blame to make our problems go away, even if it doesn't make any sense. Some will see this as a wrath of God. Others will see it as a blessing from God. Some will see your arrival and choose to blame you for the loss of the very few they loved. Be prepared for that, he said calmly. We just shared glances of concern with each other. I started to hear background chatter as the diplomats started grabbing at each other. I understand, I said. What can I say to this? I was a scientist, not a diplomat. So, that brings us back to present circumstances. Nothing in this universe is for free. What do you want from us? He asked blankly.
Well, you, basically. We have taken a look at your technology, you people have. Put it simply, we want it. Not necessarily your technology, but more your way of deploying it. The way you think about it, the way you work with it. The thing that you call the steam engine, for example. Steam technology is very common in the galaxy. But nothing like a multi-ton steam-powered logistics network. And the bridges, the trucks. The tech involved is ancient, but deployed in ingenious, innovative ways. We want that. Uplift, encouragement, improvement, I replied.
I see. Well, actually, I don't, but I'm not an engineer, so I don't have an opinion. So I'll tell you what. At the moment, our biggest hurdle is zombies and bandits. Zombies for obvious reasons, and bandits because, well, criminals and arseholes are a thing no matter what civilization you live in. You help us get rid of those, we will owe you one. Maybe the simple fact that we no longer have to suffer the trauma of this whole nonsense and can actually start burying our dead with dignity again, instead of a magnum around in the skull, will make us calm the hell down for once, he replied coldly.
It would appear that we have a clear goal. Do you have any objections to us landing infantry or military units to help with this? We have an entire fleet of warships with an army waiting to be deployed, I asked.
I have no opinion, but I strongly advise caution. I can't speak for the rest of the world. Hell, I can barely speak for my own town these days, so it's entirely up to your discretion how to approach this. The biggest issue at present are the undead, the plague, and our resource issues. If it weren't for the zombies, we would eventually figure it out ourselves and be back to being national entity eventually. A few generations, maybe, but yeah, Zeds are a threat we can't really fight at the moment. You get rid of them and the virus that causes them. We'll probably take care of the rest by ourselves. Eventually.
He shrugged. It is our purpose to uplift. We need that, innovative spirit as soon as possible. We're at the height of power, as it is. If we get a human way of thinking, we could be that much closer to immortality, or even ascension. You think so far out of the box, so to speak, with the way you build things and solve problems, it actually lies outside the bounds of statistical reason. You are a literal quantum anomaly, and we want that on our side, I said plainly.
You got all that shit just from a couple scans from bridges and trains? He asked.
You said it yourself. Simple pattern recognition, 2 + 2 = 4. There is a lot that you can learn about a species by looking at how they build things and what they build those things for,
the Cathus replied proudly. Fair enough. Now, the big question. The zombie virus. What even is it? How much do you know about it? Is it endemic? Do we have to deal with it permanently? Or can you get rid of it properly? In short, zombies. What the hell? He asked. Scan data determined it started life in a laboratory of some kind. From what we can tell, it was being used to figure out how a specific virus strain worked. Then it somehow escaped the lab, mutated itself around for a bit. 20 years' worth of natural mutation, infecting, mixing, doing what viruses do. Then somehow it got back into a lab and someone tried finding a cure for it. Whatever they did went horribly wrong, and the virus mutated with such ferocity it created a strain that you're currently dealing with, the Cathus replied.
We have found the original laboratory that originated from. The place was a mess, but we recovered 6 people from it. We are still going through and recovering all the data from it, so we do not have any definitive answers as of yet. But we do in fact have a cure for it. At least a cure for a recent infection, as you saw. It is one of the most complicated pathogens we have ever discovered, and what it does is nothing short of unimaginable. But nothing we can't handle considering the pathogen that killed half the galaxy, I remarked proudly.
So you had your version of the Black Death, huh? Nice. We might have common ground then, he remarked with a shrug. That shocked us.
The Black Death? What?
Relax. Let me see. Here it is. He got up and retrieved a book from a nearby desk. The Black Death, the worst pandemic in human history, caused by a bacterium we believe to be Yersinia pestis. Wiped out almost half the known world back in its day. We have common ground if we have a similar history. Can be useful in diplomacy. Could shut off a few naysayers. He handed the book over to me.
That's terrifying. What the hell planet is this?
I asked idly as the Cathus started reading. Our hell planet. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, diseases, congenital defects, genetic failures, cancer, animals, bacteria, viruses. Name something that exists in the universe, we probably have that equivalent of it here. And it probably killed us at some point in history. Welcome to Earth. Planet Dirt, Terra, Mother Gaia. The perfect combination of a sociopath with no boundaries and the patience of a 1,000-year-old saint. We take after her a lot, unfortunately, like mother-like children, he said simply with a shrug.
That is, disturbing. From a personal perspective, that is goddamn horrible. From a scientific perspective, even the way grass grows would be something interesting to see, I remarked.
Yeah, sure. Can we get on with this whole saving the world thing first, though? We're sort of on a timer here, he asked.
Okay, yes, sorry. Do you have any ideas where we should start?
Well, I'm not a tactician or a military advisor. I'm just a city planner. I'm dealing with that. I need my water supply repaired and treated. We get ours from the underground aquifer that used to go through a pump. But it was damaged a few horns ago. We got water, but it's contaminated and has to be purified before consumption. Wastes time and fuel that could be better used for other purposes. The radio net is down as well. The radio tower up north got knocked out a month ago. I need that back up and I can talk to other settlements again. We're good for food for now, but any help there would ease everyone's state of mind.
He spoke as he pulled out a set of folders and paperwork from the drawer nearby. Consider it done. I'll see what I can do. I need to file my official reports regardless and get a full response from the council. In dealing with zombies, we have a drone ship that carries armed and armored variants of the very same drone I'm using to talk. It can fly in the atmosphere quite easily. Can use them to clean up large holes in open spaces. But I shall float that by the Grand Admiral first. He is the tactician here, not me. I'll see what foods are compatible and make arrangements with our supply ships, I said, and made my way out of the building. I let the drone go on auto and do its thing. I went back to work, coordinating supplies and taking scans of food and raw resources on the planet to see what we could do. Their food supply was pretty close to ours in terms of biology, the differences being that human food was massively diverse in comparison. Even a few strains of edible plants that we never thought could even exist. But holy crap, was there a lot of it. We noted, however, a lot of contamination with the zombie virus. It didn't take us long to notice a variance of transmission to this odd virus, including several strains of it. Blood,
bile, saliva, and direct contact were all guaranteed infection. Water contamination was also prevalent, but it didn't seem to affect wildlife or even domestic beasts to any extent. Water could simply be boiled into steam and distilled to make it safe to consume. Now, there is one of the most interesting facts that we found about the virus. It has two strains, a water/bloodborne infection and an airborne variant. But they act independently. Every human on the planet is infected with it, but the strain is so mild that it acts little more than a common cold or simple flu, and the body's immune system adapts to it fast enough that it doesn't actually harm them. Death will eventually lead to the infected human resurrecting due to the fact that the immune system is no longer fighting back. The waterborne variant will cause violent gastrointestinal stress that can be treated to a certain capacity, with exceptions in children and elderly patients, but can be treated with care and certain medications. The bloodborne infection, however, is a guaranteed fatality. The infection from a zombie is deadly, as the decomposition adds an extra layer of bacterial and viral infection, depending on the zombie host. Add to that trauma from physical damage and injury, possible sub-infections, and the original airborne infection acting as a catalyst, it created quite a vicious pathogen. While we puffled about finding a cure, capturing zombies and acquiring blood samples, the supply unit got to work replanting fields and seeing if any of our own farming methods could be applied to human crops. After disinfecting and decontaminating, of course, we started running those tests. It wasn't nearly as hard as we thought. Earth plants and animals are goddamn easy to farm, even by our standards. The thing called a cow or bovine species was perfect for meat production, and as it turned out, it was all too easy to clone its flesh and genome. With this fact alone, we would be able to feed half the galaxy for centuries if we sent the samples to relevant parties. Corn, wheat, sugarcane. The humans had so much in terms of produce and food supply that simply was a boon in itself. Humans apparently had their own primitive but ingenious methods of selective breeding, genetic manipulation, and crop farming. We first solved the human food supply issue, of course, but when our supplier and farmers got their hands on the samples we sent and the gene code we sent, they wouldn't stop badgering us for more samples. One of our exploratory teams found a thing called a cookbook and transmitted the scanned data to the supply core with the statement, "Can you do anything with this?" It started with a thing called lasagna. We deeply regret the discovery of this publication. We also changed protocol to make sure that no further publication of human literature escapes the planet without due process ever again. Oh, so much cheese! Oh God, the cheese! Anyway, the main fleet has arrived to start scans and set up permanent operations in the star system. The biohazard safety team has started the process of analyzing blood samples of captured infected zombies or infected humans who volunteered. I hear rumors the Emperor himself is coming, but I cannot substantiate anything. By the time the fleet started setting up a fuel refinery in one of the gas giants, the science team had a cure. The mayor, the guy who spoke to on the ground, volunteered Reginald for a position as a liaison between us to ease transition. Reginald had set up his own quarters, showing us how his equipment and computer systems worked before settling into a rhythm now that proper communications had been restored to the planet. I sat in my captain's seat, checking our documentation, when he wandered onto the bridge. "Hello, Captain. Weird. Never thought I'd say that again," he said as he approached. I reached over and shook the outstretched hand in a greeting I had now gotten strangely used to.
"Hello, Reginald. Gotten used to the way things work around here yet? And have you received your vaccination shot?" I asked.
"Yeah, got my vax shot. You use larger needles that way, do. It hurt a lot more than it needed to," he replied as he rubbed his arm. "And yeah, I'm getting used to the feel of this place. Not used to the noise, even after the fit hit the shan. I'm used to quiet and birdsong and forestry, not actively overworked biolab."
"My planet has a comparatively longer day and night cycle, and we have involved to work a lot longer than you do. You'll get used to it eventually. If you don't, you can always use stimulants to help. We do," I replied.
"Stimulants? Like coffee?" he asked. "Or do you mean stims like LSD or meth?" I looked at him. I looked in that way when I suddenly realized something very interesting was about to happen.
"What, are those things?"
"Coffee is a stimulant we drink to wake up in the morning and stay awake for hours. It contains a thing called caffeine," he replied, showing me a small sachet on his belt. "Here, let me do a thing." He returned to the canteen, boiling some water. He put 2 cups out, emptying the contents of those 2 odd sachets into the cups, then water. He then returned to me and handed me one of the cups. Out of politeness, I didn't ask questions as he handed me one and started to gently sip his own. I drank it a bit. Though hot, it was manageable, bitter, strong.
"What is this?" I asked.
Coffee, the fuel of the 21st century. Coffee beans grown from a plant, roasted, cooked, ground up, then filtered through water, then drunk, cold, iced, or hot, usually with milk and sugar for most people. Me, I've got used to drinking it fresh, black as it is, he replied. I failed to think and took a deeper sip of it. I suddenly felt more alert, stronger, more wary, but not fearful, not paranoid. Before I could think too much, I had finished the contents of the cup. I finally noticed protocol and gave Reginald's cup a scan. Caffeine. Coffee was a diluted form of the most dangerous drug on the black market, and these fucking humans were consuming it to survive long workdays. I frantically ran some scans on myself and felt okay. Caffeine, in the form we know, at least, was one of the most toxic substances on the market, and one of the most addictive narcotics you could imagine. With our variant of coffee, on consumption, we would almost immediately start experiencing frantic activity, followed by a severe heart attack. Space hippies in the universe use it as a recreational spiritual experience, usually before death, and these humans drank it when they were tired. I scanned it properly. It wasn't caffeine in the way we knew it. It was still addictive, but some core components were very different from ours. It tasted nice, though, and I was still alive, so... Well, I found something else to search for later, I guess. That was tasty, I replied, setting the cup down. Cool, glad you like it. There's more in the warehouse on the 7th Street. Coffee shop could be probably more there. Anyway, back to work. I'm supposed to be on the am barking at people, so call me if you need me. Reggie shrugged and walked away. I called the Grand Admiral. His face quickly appeared on my screen. Yes? Admiral, it would appear human biology is significantly more adept than expected. They, have this substance called coffee. If this was what I think it is, get the Rithanti ambassador involved. We may have found the answer to their little problem with the riddles, I said, my voice strangely calm as I looked into my empty coffee cup. It must have been quite the sight from the perspective of the locals. Armies of 7 to 10 foot tall, multi-armed, plasma cannon-wielding aliens casually wandering around, wiping out entire hordes of living dead. Thousands of drones, probes, and remote machinery wandering about in the skies, occasionally stop to scan something or evaporate a random zombie. The humans just trying to survive coming across any of our patrols, then being casually offered a lift to a safe area filled with other humans and protected by heavy weaponry. From struggling to scrape together cans of food to suddenly being offered several tons of it at a time. From having nothing flying in the skies to suddenly having mile-long warships patrolling the skies, depositing thousands of warriors onto the ground. The humans were considerably less hostile than Major Taffert suggested they would be. That isn't to say that we didn't have problems, but our armor and shields made any effort they made against us meaningless. Hostile situations were rapidly diffused by our numbers and intimidation factor. The real surprise with all of this was the 6 humans we retrieved from the biolab in the Rocky Mountains. They were rescued, healed from their injuries, and supplied with food. Being biologists and chemists, they were quickly put under the command of Kalbanith and asked to help with the cure. It took longer than expected, owing to just how complex the situation was. Earth, as it happened, had one of the most complex ecosystems we had ever encountered. Humans themselves apparently were reflective of their own planet. Their bodies were by themselves each their own ecosystem of bacteria, and even a few endemic viruses that were part of their DNA. And each human had their own DNA spectrum. Creating a definitive cure for the zombie plague, however, didn't take too long by itself. Simple aerosol dispersal of the cure a week after our meeting with Mr. Taffert, and within days our drones were out of targets for ground teams to fight. Instead, they went to either scanning for engineering data and archive data, or helped ground teams find entrenched survivors. The teams from the biolab were not responsible for the virus either. We made this publicly clear when humans came for their heads. It was a quantum anomaly, a freak accident within its own freak accident, caused by the weird way this planet worked. The exact circumstances are not known, but all evidence points to a human security guard being accidentally exposed to a sample of the virus pre-zombie mutation. This patient 0, as he is referred to, simply contained the 1 in a billion unlucky combination of the DNA that caused the virus to mutate out of control. Patient 0, well, he was the first human infected with the Red Death. In short, this entire situation was caused by a sheer cosmic case of bad luck. We packaged the cure into some cargo ships, upgraded their engines to allow them atmospheric flight, and, unashamedly, copied the design of the crop duster aerosol dispersal devices. With this, we basically blanketed the entire planet in the cure. Within a week of this action, the zombie apocalypse was effectively over. Earth was back to being Earth. Humans were back to being humans instead of survivalists. Granted, things wouldn't be the same for generations to come, but we would help where we could. When we got the full story of just how bad this outbreak was, it sent ripples through the galaxy. Humans went from a global total of around 8.5 billion people down to less than around 300 million within the space of a year, with the majority of deaths in the first 2 months. North America had a total of 3 functional survival settlements within its borders, including 2 in Canada. South America had 2 settlements total, 1 in India, 2 in China, and several interspersed around Africa and Europe. Most humans were spread around in the wild. Even with the Red Death, the casualties were historically heartbreaking. With our military presence growing larger, we started establishing permanent colonies in abandoned places around the planet. Several attempts abandoned due to Reginald kindly pointing out where Mother Nature would be angry at us. Earthquake zones, tornado points, hurricane locations, things like that. This planet was hostile, seemingly by design. The scientists were a significant reservoir of information, and with their efforts, we were able to understand human-computer technology. It was a short step from there to unlocking their internet databases. After that, it was too easy to know what this planet's history was. Of course, it would take decades to fully explore these databases. This internet had a repository of information so spectacularly vast that we could barely contain our excitement. Every computer we powered up added something new. It got so excessive with the sheer quantity of data, I had to contact the Hellworld and order a creation of a delivery of several dedicated digital storage ships to hold it all. These humans, they knew so much about the universe by themselves, basically by just doing math and looking through satellites. We began salivating from the concept of just what they would eventually be capable of if they got actual tech to work with instead of just look at it and think about it really hard, as most human science was at the time. Every time we powered up a computer or electronics device with an internet connection and got through its security, our own knowledge of how the universe worked expanded. Through the simple process of theory crafting, as the scientists labeled it, backed up with some of the most complex mathematics we'd ever seen, they were able to correctly determine how something worked without ever going near it. The more and more we learned, the more and more we all wanted humans in our empires. As it turns out, though, Earth wasn't the only place humans existed. I was sitting in my bridge seat, poring over data while drinking coffee, a blend called Blue Mountain, apparently, one of the best brands according to Reginald, when one of the scientists, the head researcher, a female named Mary, approached me. She casually walked up and helped herself to a pot of coffee, now proudly displayed on our bridge. "Good morning," she said. "Hello, Mary. Is getting used to the ship life? Microgravity and the lack of trees are now our only real concerns, thanks to you. This was expected to be an extinction event. Can't believe it ended so quickly," she replied, shaking her head. "Considering everything I have seen, I am fairly confident that you would have sorted it out yourself," I said with a smirk. "You drastically overestimate our abilities, sir. In all seriousness, thank you for the help." She softly sipped her coffee. "I've been receiving reports from the Emperor of my own nation. We will have an alternative option for you eventually, hopefully. I hope this means that we get a new planet to work on. This one's kind of screwed," she said. "I mean, before the zombies, things weren't exactly looking up. That's one of the reasons we—" She stopped mid-sentence, and her eyes practically bulged out of her head. "God damn it!" What's going on?" I asked, concerned. "Mars, I finally remembered. I'm so damn stupid. 20 years before the virus hit, we began to work on a Martian colony project. I completely forgot about it," she said with a frustrated smile. "Mars? What do you mean? And what's a Mars?" I asked. She moved over and typed something. It amazed me how easy it was for humans just to take command of a situation. "Let's see, do you have that part of it yet? Yeah, Huston, here it is. 20 years worth of work, here." She had displayed a series of articles of what appeared to be a primitive interplanetary colonization project. Chemical rockets used to ferry people and resources to Earth's closest neighbor, Mars. I wasted no time and ordered a few frigates to quickly jump to the red planet and scan for any signs of civilization. Within the hour, I got more than just a scan report. I got a full first contact report from the captain. The humans of Mars were apparently ignorant of the situation on their home planet, and Mary requested to go with it and save them from the shock, at least for now. It was a fully self-contained, self-sufficient colony of maybe 3,000 humans living under the planet's surface, inside giant sealed lava tubes beneath the rolling dunes and sandstorms. They had very limited contact outside of the planet's surface, besides the occasional drops of chemical-based supply rockets that took months to get from A to B. With this revelation, a new sense of urgency overcame the galactic community. The technology the Martian colony had was beyond primitive by galactic standards, yet the colony was not only self-sustaining, but actively growing. I asked Mary for a greater context. It was an interesting revelation.
So back when the world was in political and economic shambles, encroaching resource wars, global political tension, a rapidly approaching economic crisis, a bunch of billionaires and super rich gathered together around a particular company and pooled resources to start up. Let's just say that those days were volatile. And if it wasn't for the zombies, we probably would have nuked each other, she explained.
Nuked? What's that? I asked.
Nuke? You mean you don't have nuclear weapons?
She replied curiously. My face went pale. I'm sorry, but do you have access to nuclear armament? I asked.
Enough nuclear armament spread across several countries to challenge the fleet that currently wanders around. Megaton yield warheads. If the zombies didn't kill us, the nukes would have. She said this with such casual attitude that it scared me a bit. I remained silent as she reached over and typed a few things on my console. The article popped up. Humanity was on the brink of its own extinction at its own hand long before this. For over a century, if this was any indication, a world war that created two more world wars, one which led to a full-scale conflict, and another that led to a political standoff, followed by a resource and trade war, a war on terror, whatever that was, and all of that suddenly vanished from the zombie war. A war humans were expected to lose, apparently. The Martian colonization project was a sort of last resort, sponsored by governments and churches, paid for by the wealthy and affluent, and ultimately accomplished by our best and brightest, or at the very least, hardest and most daring. Sent a few rovers and drones to the planet, found a sealed underground network of tunnels and lava tubes from ancient times, and decided to use it as our first base of operations while we worked to try and terraform the world. Make it more livable, you know. No politics, no borders, no bullshit. Just staying alive. It seemed to work, she explained calmly. And, you think that this is normal? I asked. Normal for us, yeah. We were kind of stupid, to be honest. Yeah, we have incredible innovations and engineering prowess and whatnot, but, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, we're kind of dumb. Granted, when we actually have something to work for, or work towards, that dumbness goes away, and we do stuff that actually makes sense. Hence the Martian colony. But generally, we aren't that intelligent when we have real problems, hence the resource wars, which by itself is a stupid concept. But in any case, none of it matters now, she replied with a shrug. You don't seem to have a very high opinion of your own species, I replied. I've seen what we do when we're bored or angry. This whole zombie thing is just a reset button on civilization. It didn't end our hatred for each other. It'll pick up again eventually. Familiarity breeds contempt, as the phrase goes, and I'm a scientist. I've met some definitely stupid people in my lifetime, but this whole thing maybe gives it a bit of hope. Maybe this time around we'll actually be smart enough to figure out this whole mess, preferably without warfare. She shrugged and walked away. Well, that's interesting. Humans are very odd creatures, I said to myself. I simply shook my head and resumed work until a bit later when Reginald appeared. I noticed a stark contrast with humans. Mary was pessimistic, whereas Reginald seemed very positive about the future. I asked him if he knew about the Mars colony. Nah, I heard about it. Didn't think much of it would come of it. Probably would have come back to Earth in a few centuries and noticed just how bad things were. Earth likely either completely abandoned and back to the wild, or would have had the tech to fix it all or something. If we are anything, it's stubborn. We don't really know how to give up or stop trying. The indomitable human spirit kind of puts all this apocalypse stuff into perspective, really, he said, sipping his coffee. I have noticed a strange disconnect between humans. Suddenly your mayor's warnings are starting to make sense. Very volatile race you are. Don't look too much into it. The shit we had before was part of going stir-crazy. Most people didn't leave their hometowns. Most people only ever knew what was going on in the world via the news, paid for by other idiots with agendas. Everyone got angry. Anger meant sales. It worked both ways, independent and state. Unable to go anywhere outside of the world because it was scary or whatever. Or unable to explore the universe because the rocket fuel was kind of pricey, you know? So yeah, when we run out of options, we get a bit antsy. Wouldn't you? He asked with a smirk. I thought for a bit. Well, you have a point there. Maybe it goes a bit deeper than one would expect. Time for us to learn about it, I suppose. The zombies are gone. The infrastructure is improving. We even have safe spots for smaller settlements to start up now, and it's just a matter of cleanup, and at this point.
Frankly, if you decide to leave us alone, nobody would give it a second thought. If I didn't know better, I'd say that you'd have no issue just going, well, been fun, we out, and walked away.
Why would we do that? I asked.
I don't know. Just saying that you have the option. We owe you big time at this point, so all I'm saying is, if you want, there you go. Generally speaking, we can handle it by ourselves from here. If the Mars colony is any indication, we just don't know when to give up, he replied casually.
I believe that, but frankly, I think we simply stick around for now. We aren't finished scanning everything after all. It would take us decades to pass through all the data, and there is still so much to do, I said, giving him a side glance and smirk. He simply smiled back and knowingly nodded as he finished his coffee. We began work with the Martian colony, exchanging archive data and mining rights with the humans on the barren world for access to our farming technology. I wouldn't say the transition was smooth, but we built most of our bases away from human occupation and simply returned everything we could find to the humans. It belonged to them, after all. The end of this expedition came with the Emperor himself appearing in the star system and offering humanity a chance to join the Imperium or return to a stable state of a new world. Thus began the exodus of Earth. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.